I felt like prey being stalked by a predator. That's the best way I could describe it. If you watch any nature programs, you could tell, like, when an animal's being hunted, it knows it's being hunted, but it has no idea where the hunter is. So that's exactly how I felt at that time.
Greetings, temporal humans. This is Boudreaux, the occasionally vulnerable to predators, cybernetic ghost from the future. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 12 of the Trailer Trash Terrors podcast. Vic Hermanson's guest tonight is known as Paranormal Will. He refers to himself as a demonologist, and his life experiences are very different from those of most other temporal humans. It seems that the demonologist path chose him, as much as he chose the demonologist path. This week's episode is titled, When Psychic Prey Grows Powerful Claws, Part 1.
Trailer Trash Terrors.
Hello everyone, this is Vic Hermanson, or as the cybernetic ones say, Vic Hermanson. We have Paranormal Will tonight. We have Paranormal Will next episode. So just a few pieces of information. When I did this interview with Paranormal Will, it took a little more than 2 hours to get through things, and again, we could have gone probably 2 more hours. So, I'm going to break this interview into 2 parts. It's the first time I've ever done that. I need some feedback as to what the proper podcast length is. I've often gone for an hour and 20 minutes, one time even an hour and 40 minutes. I think that just seems too long. So, perhaps somewhere around 45 to 55 minutes may be correct. During this interview, you're going to hear me mention JJ a lot. Let me tell you about JJ. JJ is the producer, inventor, and host of the podcast Southern Demonology, which is unlike any other podcast in existence. He's an academic. He has studied religion, ancient languages, the views of multiple religions on demons, for many years, and he knows his stuff cold. I am not an academic. I am an observer. I'm a thinker, and I'm someone who's pretty good at putting together things that I've learned through all kinds of different mechanisms. So, I always recommend that you go and listen to the Southern Demonology podcast, because I think you'll like it. It's not like any other podcast in the world. Also, this is the first interview show recorded using Zencastr, and I think it does a pretty darn good job. It's capable of putting your guest's voice on one audio track and the interviewer's voice on another audio track. It can probably do that for multiple users. But for right now, I've only had myself and one guest. It's just part of the continuing effort to make this show sound as good as I can and to make the content as compelling as possible. In part 1 of the interview, we're going up through about age 14 or 15 in Will's life. Believe me, by that point in time, he had had plenty of interesting and important things happen to him. So, we'll join the interview in progress in just a moment. Right now, though, I wonder what Boudreaux's talking about when he says that he's vulnerable to predators.
Vic Hermanson, I am so deeply pleased you asked that question. If I could feel warm and fuzzy, I would, I suppose, feel truly warm and fuzzy. Insulation jokes aside, I do perceive that you care for my safety and well-being as a sapient entity. I cannot say organism, as there is no organic aspect of me. But, before I can discuss predators, I must discuss the where of my existence. As far as I can tell, I exist in a dimension parallel to, and minimally interactive with, the earthly physical plane. In this place, if place is the correct word, energy fields such as me are far more cohesive. I have yet to find another sapient entity here. But there are a great many entities with lesser cognitive capabilities. Some of them, thankfully, a small number of them, are huge, fast, dangerous, ravenous, and aggressive. If they existed on the earthly plane, I am quite sure they would eat aardvarks, ants, bears, boars, cats, bats, dogs, hogs, elephants, antelopes, pheasants, ferrets, giraffes, gazelles, stoats, goats, shoats, ostriches, lions, jackals, muskrats, minks, dingoes, zebras, foxes, boxes, octopuses, penguins, people, warthogs, yaks, old news, newts, walruses, wildebeests, moose, mice, moles, snipes, elk, wapiti, tortoises, roadrunners, elands, foxes, wolves, guinea hens, vultures, eagles, hummingbirds, squids, salamanders, water buffalo, bison, kangaroos, pigeons, daws, unicorns, vixens, oxen, widgeons, rabbits, and especially boudreaux. Interestingly, there is an analog to vision where I exist, and I would say that they bear a passing resemblance to earthly marine predators.
Okay, wait. You've just sprung this on me. This is a whole new thing. I never knew you were in mortal danger. I didn't know there were extra-dimensional cybernetic sharks after you.
Oh yes, Vic Hermanson, wherever there is life, there is also danger. That seems to be part of the cosmic balance. I believe though, that I am in far less danger than the typical temporal human. Humans have a mean time before failure of about 70 years, and far less in many environments. My MTBF, in comparison, is many orders of magnitude beyond that. However, this is not the time to discuss the life cycle of disembodied hyper-intelligent consciousnesses. This is the time to listen to and learn from Paranormal Will. So, let's go to the interview, already in progress.
Welcome back to Trailer Trash Terrors. This is Vic Hermanson, or as they call me, Vic Hermanson, with a new guest tonight. The guest tonight is Paranormal Will. I've been aware of him for several months now. I listened to his interviews with JJ on Southern Demonology and found it pretty fascinating. Also, to be honest, a little bit frightening. So tonight, we are going to try to have an interview that covers topics in a little different way from JJ. So, welcome to the show, Paranormal Will.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm really happy you're here. So, if someone came to you and said, give me the few-minute elevator speech as to who you are and how you got to where you are today concerning the paranormal topic, what would you say to them?
Well, I usually tell people I'm a paranormal researcher, which is kind of like a step above investigator, because with me, I try to research a lot of the new equipment and stuff. But also, I've been doing that since I was really young, even though I had no idea what I was doing to begin with. But then things came into my life that set me on the path of becoming a demonologist. And that started when I was 14, and I actually became a demonologist when I was 27 or 28.
How do you know when you have reached the point of being a demonologist?
It's, I know for a lot of people that just watch the TV shows, it's a decision and they're like, "Oh, I want that just because it's a cool title." With me, it was a calling. Like I said, when I was 14, I witnessed my first exorcism and had nobody to talk to after that, because after the exorcism, the priest was like, "This didn't happen." And I was like, "Bull crap! If it didn't, I just seen it. You can't tell me something didn't happen that I just seen." So, like, not having anybody to talk to, I was like, "Okay, who do I go to?" I tried our pastor, and they were like, "You can't talk about these things." And I was like, "Okay, why not?" But yeah, it was a calling. I was called to help people because, just like me, there's people out there who don't know who to turn to when things are going crazy and hectic in their life.
Mhm.
And that's when I get the call.
Paranormal Will, it seems, is somewhat of a paranormal first responder. That is indeed a noble calling.
I mean, you've got a story that's unlike anyone else I've ever heard.
Yeah.
You were talking with JJ about having an introduction to odd, difficult to explain, probably paranormal things at a very early age.
Yes.
You were, how old were you?
I was about 8 or 9 when I first started noticing like apparitions in our house. And grow like I say with everybody else, growing up in a religious home, that stuff just doesn't happen. It's part of our imagination, or it's you were asleep. It's never actually ghost, because the Christian Bible doesn't see ghost as good things. And anybody who converts with the deceased is considered a necromancer.
Mm-hmm.
So
Did you ever find anybody who did take you seriously at that time?
no.
Not a single person.
No, I had to keep everything quiet, like things that were going on in the house when I was home alone, because sometimes I would get to skip church on Wednesdays.
Mhm.
So, like it terrified me. It's been the like as a child, I was the most scared I've ever been in the field as I am now. Of course, with everything I've been through in the past, it's kind of understandable now. But yeah, I've
Have you?
had like go ahead.
No, I was going to say, have you seen the movie The Sixth Sense?
Yes.
Okay, there's a scene in there where the little boy who can see dead people is seeing dead people,
Yeah.
and he's just as scared as he can possibly be. I mean, his teeth are chattering. He's holding, trying to hold himself tight to protect himself.
Yeah.
So it's really good acting for a little kid.
Yes.
Was that how you felt?
Yeah, exactly. Except I wasn't the only time I've seen something or somebody who was deceased, I didn't see them like him, like how he saw them
Mm-hmm.
when they died.
Mm-hmm.
The only person I've ever seen was because we grew up on a farm. Well, I grew up, the house that we had was on an old farm. And
Mm-hmm.
where our house was is where the slaves used to stay. So I saw like completely a slave woman passing through our walls. It had like I could see the bonnet, I could like tell you the physical features of her face and everything to her dress. I've only saw that once, but then after that is when I started getting odd feelings. So I could kind of feel when something was about to happen, and that's when I would like hide under a blanket until my grandparents got home.
So it was a when you saw the supposed slave woman walking through the walls or that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Um, was there any change in the environment or
Not at that time.
okay?
With me now, knowing what I know now, I call that a residual hunting,
Mm-hmm.
which is basically if you record something on an old record, then you can listen to that forever in a loop. And residuals are kind of the same way. It's kind of a death loop. So the spirit wanders through the same motions at the same time every day. So with that, I was just seeing them go through their daily life, and where they were walking through walls used to be where their hallway could have been, or a doorway, which is why ghosts go through walls, because that's how the floor plan layout was when they were alive.
Do you think there's any consciousness associated with those loops?
Not with residuals.
Okay, that's just a piece of information that for some reason keeps getting played over and over again.
Yeah, we're trying to, like, any investigator is still trying to figure out why residuals keep going in the same loop, and what we could do to help stop it and get them to move on.
When you were, I want to dwell on this a little bit because it's fascinating to me.
It's fine.
I don't know how deeply JJ probes, but I probe pretty deeply.
Yeah, that's fine.
Because there are a jillion questions in my mind that I want an answer to, and I can't get them unless I ask. So when you were let's say that you're 10,
Yeah.
and that would have been a prime time for you to be feeling these difficult emotions when you were there in the house.
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me the environment. Tell me what you were sensing around you.
Me, it was. I felt like prey being stalked by a predator.
Ooh.
That's the best way I could describe it.
That's a good description.
Yeah, like if you watch any nature programs, you could tell, like, when an animal's being hunted, it knows it's being hunted, but it has no idea where the hunter is. So that's exactly how I felt at that time.
What did you feel? Did you feel that there was anything that could protect you?
Not really, because I wasn't for sure if praying would protect me, because being raised the way I was, I didn't know if me seeing or feeling this stuff was a sin or not. So
Well, that's a very psychologically difficult situation. I mean, you're
Yeah.
seeing something that you're not bringing about,
yeah,
and then in your mind and your heart, you're worrying of just existing is a sinful state.
yeah,
That's rough.
it is, or it was.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to put anyone through that. When you were going through these things, did you ever feel anything beyond that? Did you feel like there was ever an attack at a time when you were actually harmed?
There wasn't a time like that. There was a time I was completely over terrified. I kind of felt it as a warning for some reason. A friend of mine came over to stay the night, and we decided to sleep in another bedroom where my uncle used to sleep when he was younger. Now, this bedroom had a door handle, like the knob, but it didn't have the inner workings of the door, so it wasn't able to latch shut and lock or anything. So we're in that room. I'm laying in the bed, my friend's laying on the floor, and that door slams shut, and we cannot get it open. Until my
Wow.
my grandpa was, like, their room was right across the hall, and he heard that door slam, and he came in there and yelling at us, quit slamming the doors, it's 2 a.m. It's like, I didn't do it.
And of course, he probably didn't believe that.
No.
Did anybody else? Sorry, did your grandparents ever feel these same things, or did they? If they did, would they just not say?
My grandpa would never say, but he also wasn't home a lot. He was a trucker, so.
Uh-huh.
But my grandma, whenever she would feel something, she felt it completely different. So she assumed it was my mom coming to visit.
Okay, so she interpreted it as an overall positive thing.
Yeah.
Okay, and that was not what was in your mind or heart at the time.
No.
When Did you find yourself staying away from home as much as possible to avoid
Uh,
having to be exposed to that?
I would try, but I had nowhere to go, and we lived out in the woods.
Oh boy.
So whenever something like that would happen, it made it even more terrifying to go outside because there was just woods all around.
Did you what I grew up in Louisville when I was about that age,
Okay.
which is, just right across the river from Indiana,
Yeah.
and we used to go over to Evansville a lot to fish, and when my dad was hunting, where where were you? What was the nearest big town?
Actually, Evansville.
Evansville. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm from a small little town around Evansville called Boonville.
Boonville. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So we've been in the same part of the country.
Yep.
Well, and you're right. I mean, there's a lot of thick, heavy forest out there.
Yeah.
It can be very pretty, but it's also very isolated.
Yep.
Did you have these things happen to you places other than your home?
There's only been one other place. Back in Boonville, where our bowling alley used to be, there was this old white house. And every time we drove by it, it was abandoned and like fenced in and everything. Every time we drove by it, I always had a weird feeling. And my grandpa or my grandmother, she'd always joke around like, yeah, that house has been abandoned because of all the ghosts that live in it. I was like, now, how come you tell me not to talk about it, but you're making jokes about it? But there was one time I was around 15 years old. Me and my friends walked to the bowling alley, and when we left the bowling alley, we went behind the house. And I looked up in the window, and on the third story of this house, it's like an old mansion. It's no longer there anymore. But in the third story window of this house, there was this girl with black hair and a white dress staring down at me. And when I was looking at her, I could see through her like she was a projection or something.
Translucent.
And, yeah. And I couldn't move. My friends got about 100 yards in front of me before they realized, oh, Will's just standing there. Mm-hmm. And they turned around and came, and I'm like, just this look of fear in my eyes and everything. And when they snapped me out of that was about the time I was like, all right, I got to start going on this journey. What are these things that I keep feeling and seeing, and why? Why do I keep feeling and seeing them?
Wow. I say that because I'm just, one of the worst things to me in life is someone who feels psychologically alone.
Yeah.
Feeling as if those people whom you would normally turn to for support, love, comfort, they're not going to be there.
No.
For this particular thing. That'd be a really, really rough thing to go through.
Yeah.
Let's just keep going chronologically. So when you came to that decision that, okay, I can't not embrace the journey because it's going to happen to me regardless, what did you start to change at that point?
At that point, I learned how to keep things more to myself. Mm-hmm. I was living with my dad at this point because it was after I witnessed the exorcism and everything. I was slowly stopping going to church because mm-hmm. my dad never forced me. So I'd start going from like twice a day on Sundays to once on Sundays, and then every other Sunday, then every third Sunday. Then eventually I just quit going. Mm-hmm. And I grew up in that era where, you could be out as long as you want, just be home when the street lights are on. But on the weekends, my dad didn't care what I did as long as I came home at some point on the weekend to let him know, if I want to be out all night riding my bike through the town with my friends, to let him know. Mm-hmm. So I'd tell him, it's like, hey, I'm going to go ride my bike with so-and-so. Probably won't be back till like sunrise. He was like, okay. So instead of doing that, though, I'd sneak off to that white house. And
wow.
Yeah, at first I would never go inside. I'd start to just kind of like walk around the property because I
Uh-huh.
was afraid of getting in trouble by the cops.
I would be. Well,
Then,
I would be too. Yeah.
yeah. Then there were a couple of times it's like I was like, all right, I got to go inside. So I actually went in, and of course, being young and trying to talk to ghosts and not knowing what you're doing, you're going to ask a lot of stupid questions.
Well,
So
I'm going to say. I'm going to say there, especially there are no stupid questions because how do you get any information about what to ask?
yeah, well, I didn't even know like there were books and stuff about it at that time, even because I've been told, to stay hush hushed and everything. That there would never be any writings about it, but there's been books written by so many people that I could have been reading to, you know, learn this stuff.
Would you have really had access to them in Boonville, Indiana?
I don't know if our library would have held any of those.
Yeah, I'm kind of but I'm thinking that if you went to the library and you talked to the librarian sincerely,
Yeah,
most librarians, they're pretty curious people.
yeah.
She might help you find some of that. So when you got into the White House, what did you see?
I really didn't see anything. Nothing ever happened when I went there.
Hmm.
So my fear of everything started kind of dwindling, and I was kind of thinking, well, maybe this all is in my head. But from that point on until I was older, I started asking around people at school and stuff like that in junior high and high school. It's like, if they knew anything about the White House, they would tell me of times they used to sneak in there. And of course, they used to be partiers too. So
Mm-hmm.
they'd sneak in there and party because their parents weren't there and they wouldn't get caught. But then they start talking to me about other urban legends and myths around our town. I was like, well, where are these places? Because I kind of want to go there now. So they'd tell me about some of the other places, and I'd sneak off to those places. And just the more and more that I would do it, the more and more comfortable I felt in that setting.
Can I feel envy? I don't know. But if I can, I envy the experiences of childhood and adolescence that Paranormal Will had. Although I can learn, I never evolved from a smaller, less experienced being, and I never had the nurture of parents, even flawed ones. Even though some of what Will describes was clearly difficult and painful, he seems to have been successful in using these events to increase his empathy and understanding. That is another amazing temporal human trait.
Do you think that once a place is haunted, that it stays haunted?
I actually don't.
Okay.
But I'm trying to think of, I forgot the name of this. There was a group of psychologists back in the 50s or 60s. They did a thing where they created a fake dead person.
Dennis.
Yes.
Ah.
So, like something like that. Because before, I just actually learned about this whole thing this year. So I used to like wonder if I go to a place that wasn't haunted, could I therefore create something that create an actual haunting? And then I learned about Dennis, where the psychologist actually created a ghost.
They did. They were able to manifest various phenomena.
Yeah. But in that, I also think where if a person quits going and asking these things, these like if a group of paranormal investigators will quit going to a certain building and quit asking, like communicating with the spirits, I
Uh-huh.
think that they'll just kind of dissipate. They'll go somewhere else or cross over.
I have a real. What was the denomination of the church you were in?
I grew up Baptist because my grandma turned her back on Catholicism.
Okay. So and of course Baptist. I mean, there are 950 different flavors of Baptist.
Yes, there are.
I mean, there are Baptists who are at the snake handling level, and then there are Baptists that are essentially Unitarians.
We didn't handle snakes,
and you weren't Unitarian. You were somewhere in the middle there.
Yeah, the church, the sign outside the church said Baptist, but they all acted pretty Pentecostal. I grew up with dancing in the aisles and everything else, and then I realized when I was in my teens that that's not the way Baptists are.
I'll tell you a story if you don't mind. I went to a Pentecostal church in southern Indiana because my sister had moved up there, and it was this old rickety wooden church, and there were it was hot. They had never air conditioned the place, and southern Indiana in the summertime, it can get pretty warm.
Yep,
and it's humid, and so we're sitting there, everybody's waving themselves, and this little old preacher comes out. He must have been 85. And so he starts preaching, and it's just he's building up this energy, going and going and going. And pretty soon it's, fire and brimstone and, prostrate yourself before the Lord and all this kind of stuff. And he went on getting more and more animated for 2 hours. And finally, some of the deacons from the church had to kind of go out and just almost pick him up and move him off of the platform where he was preaching from. And he was preaching as they were carrying him out the door. And that was one of the most amazing things I'd ever seen. I didn't think, he didn't look like he could go on doing anything for 2 hours.
Yeah.
But once he got the spirit, he could keep going for a long time. Well, tell me then. Okay, so the first time you saw an exorcism, it was sometime about age 14?
Yes.
That's an extremely rare thing for a 14-year-old to see.
Yes.
How did that come about?
That came about when my uncle, he got kicked out of the military. He failed his physical fitness test, and his wife and 2 kids ended up moving into that house with us. Him and his wife and their oldest daughter all slept in the back bedroom where I had the door slam on me. And they put their son, who was a year old, in my bedroom. And every time we'd go to church, his wife would always stay behind. Mm-hmm. And we found out later that while she stayed behind, she was practicing black magic and messing with Ouija boards without knowing any of the boundaries. So that's...
Was she doing that as just entertainment? Did she feel some connection to the darker side of worship? What was she doing there?
She could never really answer. I know she grew up severely religious too. I forgot the name of the religion, but it's the one where the women always have to wear like the dresses and everything.
Like
so
Mennonite or
something like that.
Anyway, a very, very strict religion in terms of behavior and dress codes and things like that.
Yeah, but I also think it may have been something where, with my uncle being stationed all around the world and everything, it's probably something she started doing on some of the military bases with some of the other army wives, anywhere else. So, and then moving back in with us, she had nobody to do any of that with, but she was still interested in it because it was such a no type thing for her to do.
Okay, well, she wouldn't be the first person to attach themselves to something because it was forbidden,
right?
and so I'm just thinking in my mind of army-based covens of well, I mean it. I mean, you have on any big military installation, you're going to have all these women who are lonesome.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They don't have a lot to do. Their husbands are gone. often overseas. Yeah, I mean, I could see something like that happening.
Yeah.
Was the baby, I then suppose, was with her while she was doing the Ouija board and other things?
He was usually in bed. For some reason, she had no motherly connection towards him.
Really?
Yeah.
Who took care of him?
She says she did when we were at church or something, but most of the time when we were home,
Uh-huh.
my grandma would take care of him during the day. I kind of got in the habit since he was in my room of trying to take care of him at night, which was hard for a 14-year-old to do.
Very hard.
Yep, especially when you're on the track team and stuff like that.
Well, I mean, you were tired. You probably, you needed your rest.
Yeah.
But so, do you think that this? I mean, there are other people around, and small children are resilient.
Yeah.
But do you think that this baby was psychologically neglected?
I do think so.
Okay.
At least from like the one person where he shouldn't have been neglected from.
Right. The one person that you would think almost always in life you'd be able to say, she's got my back, she's got my corner, she's there.
Yep.
That's very sad.
Yeah.
But I can also see, and please tell me if I'm stepping on your toes or anything, but I can also see how that would leave a vacuum. A place where something else could come and occupy a place that should be occupied by a feeling of love and safety.
That's actually, I never thought of it like that, but yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean, I've been interested in these subjects for a long time, and it wasn't until I met JJ that I started talking to people in earnest. And I'm working from the conviction that people are telling me their life. They're telling me the truth. And there's no reason for me to not believe what they say. It doesn't mean I have to understand everything they say.
Yeah.
But I do want to hear these stories. I think there's tremendous power in stories. And so, okay, baby possibly neglected, 14-year-old boy really would rather be off doing wind sprints. I was on the track team too. House full of strangers, probably an overall feeling of being crowded. There's just a lot of psychic energy. Probably people get angry pretty quickly, pretty easily.
Yep.
Am I describing what it was like, or
It's like you were there.
okay? Well, all right. So, what starts happening next?
After that, like I've said before, a lot of people will say, oh, it's just a baby. They're going to act like that and stuff like, But somebody who's 1 year old who could barely talk themselves should not be able to speak sentences in Latin.
No. That would. Sorry to interrupt, but I'll stop interrupting. But yep, as soon as I hear that 1 year old look at me and say anything in Latin, I'm going somewhere else.
Yeah. But not only that, they also had they had strength that a 1 year old should not have at all. So, he also had he was spitting, he was biting, and that stuff that could be said that a normal 1 year old would do. But when you add in the other things, that he had about 4 or 5, maybe 6 different telltale signs from a Catholic point that he was possessed. And go ahead.
No, that was just a expulsion of breath.
Oh, I thought you were about to ask something.
Well, I always have things to ask, but I'm just thinking, it's horrible and tragic and frightening when this is happening to someone who's 25.
Yeah.
But when it's happening to a 1-year-old,
Yeah,
who's
especially, we're taught that children are supposed to be born pure and stuff like that. Shouldn't be able to happen, especially like with possessions, because you're always told that demons need permission to possess you. And there's no way a baby could say, "Yeah, take me over,"
no, but I have read that there is such a thing as. I mean, last night we watched this movie on JJ's page called Hereditary.
Yeah.
I will never watch that movie again. But I have read that there's such a thing as familial permission, to where parents, people in previous generations, give permission to whatever forces involved to possess a child.
Yeah.
And I can't think of any greater form of child abuse, but maybe that's what happened.
It could have been.
Well, especially with the mother looking into occult things.
Yeah.
So we have this child who's behaving in ways that a 1-year-old generally would not behave in. How do you find somebody to address that issue?
Well, my grandma was raised Catholic. Like, she went to Catholic school and everything growing up. And she called her priest. And she hasn't talked to her priest since when my mom passed away when I was 7, and he refused to read my mom her last rites to get into heaven. That's why my grandma turned her back on Catholicism. So
why did the priest refuse to do that? Was it did he feel she was not in a state of grace or something, or
she quit going to church?
Oh, okay.
She quit doing her. Trying to think of the best way to put this, like her Catholic teachings.
Okay.
And everything. I mean, so, like, I don't know when she stopped going to church. I know she never went to church the whole time I was alive. So I know she's never confessed her sins and stuff like that. And so he just basically saw her as a non-Catholic.
Okay. That's not the first time I've heard a story like that. And so at that point, your grandmother decided not to be a part of the Catholic Church.
Yep.
But faced with this almost unique situation with this baby, she has to turn somewhere.
Yeah. And at that point, the only people anybody knows to deal with anything like that is the Catholic Church. And
so did this priest come to your home?
Yeah, he came in. He went in my room with my cousin in there for a while and came out. He asked if he could use the phone. He made a phone call, hung up the phone. He's like, I gotta wait. They're going to call back. So he gets a call back. And I take it then that's when he got the okay to do an exorcism. So he goes back in the room without any of us, just him and the baby again. And then he asked us to come in to help assist him. Basically because usually priests will have to have witnesses.
Right.
They'll need somebody else, usually of the church, to be there to help them. And a lot of times they'll also need somebody from the medical field to, like, keep a record of the heart rate and stuff like that and their stress levels. He didn't get any of that. So with this being a baby and everything, it was like, let's do this now. So while he performed that, we all had to sit there and, like, witness everything. We also
did he ask you to pray or anything during that time, or
whenever a priest will do an exorcism, they'll usually have copies of a prayer. That way, they're supposed to say part of a prayer, and then the parts that we say will be in a different color. So like he'll say a little bit, then we'll say a little bit, and then it's all part of a prayer.
Yeah, responsorial prayer is very Catholic.
Yeah. If anybody has ever seen the documentary "The Devil and Father Amort," he performs an exorcism during that, and it's the same prayer. He's Italian, so of course he's doing it all in Italian, but they will not use the closed captions on some of it because they don't want everybody to know the prayer of an exorcism. I have the prayer, so automatically I knew once I started reading the little bits of pieces they had on there, I was like, wait a second, I know those words. So I went and I grabbed my copy that was given to me by a priest friend of mine. And I was like, okay, I can read along exactly with what they're doing.
When this started, I mean the media representation of an exorcism is that there is resistance on the part of the possessed.
Yes.
That whether it's happening from the consciousness of the person, which would essentially be impossible with a 1-year-old.
Yeah.
Or it's happening with the consciousness of the possessing entity, they resist.
Yeah.
Did the baby resist?
Yes. He was fine until the prayer started. And that's when he started crying like he broke his leg or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah. Like anytime holy water was flung on him or the crucifix was brought in front of him, that's when it was the worst. That's when we literally thought, like, is there something physically wrong with him? Because
so just screaming, flailing, writhing, this kind of thing.
Yep, no pea soup.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm not joking. I mean, I'm really not. I'm just thinking.
Yeah,
you've got kids.
Yeah,
I've got kids. I mean, think back when a child was 1, and they've had a look. My second child was sick for the whole first year of his life, and he would cry and cry and cry and cry and cry. There would be days where he would cry for 15 hours straight.
Yeah,
and I can remember at least twice. All day long, I've walked around, I've rocked him, I've patted his back, I've given him things he loves to eat, I've taken him on rides, and I'm just exhausted. And I can remember, twice going in his room, putting him in his crib, kissing his forehead, and saying, "Hey, buddy, listen, I'm going to see you in a half an hour, and you'll probably still be mad, but you'll be alive." And I mean, I really was to the point of being so frustrated and so tired that I almost wanted to lash out at this child. I didn't. But then I can remember going back in, and he's finally calmed down. He's gone to sleep. And there's just this peaceful, whole, positive feeling in the room.
Yeah.
And so this child, there wasn't that feeling.
Not during that, no.
Not during that. Well, obviously, the rite that the priest did by himself with, complete novices there to help him in any way. I mean, I guess they would have to call that a minor rite.
That's how I describe it, was a minor rite, because it usually with an actual exorcism, it will take days. It will take more. It will take more than one. Just like with the case of Annalise McKell, I think it took like 28 or more before she finally passed from it. But this was one of those rare one and done types. Thankfully.
So how did the rite end?
The rite ended. It did take a couple of times to pray.
Hmm.
It did end with my cousin finally stopping and kind of looking around like he just woke up from a nap. Like, why are all these people in here and staring at me?
Hmm.
And he just wanted, like, he wanted to be held. And my grandma reached for him and she picked him up and he was back to acting like a normal child. And you could feel like something in my room changed.
Hmm.
There was a heaviness was gone, and of course it was replaced with another heaviness of how did all this come to be? How did all this happen?
Yeah, but
Like,
but but then you're to the point of the heaviness you're feeling. Then is just standard painful human psychology,
yeah,
which can be just as heavy,
yep,
but it can be addressed without supernatural means.
right,
Wow. I hope I'm not dwelling on this too long. I mean, this is one of the scariest things I've ever heard, and I'm trying to think how I would have handled that at age 14. Not very well, I don't think.
I don't think a lot of people, a lot of normal people wouldn't. I was kind of out of the norm at this point. So.
Hmm. No, no, no. You've got obviously some ability to perceive things that most people simply can't perceive.
Yeah,
I'm an extremely aware, empathetic, intuitive person, and I know exactly where that comes from. I mean,
yeah,
that comes from my father being uh, frequently drunk and very abusive,
yeah,
and so I learned to recognize just the tiniest little signs of when something bad was about to happen, and that gave me a chance to try and change things. I didn't normally succeed,
yeah,
but but that ability has stuck with me my whole life, and so generally I can hear. All I've got to hear is one word from someone, and in that one word, I can intuit a great deal of their internal mental state at the time,
yeah,
and it's a good skill to have, and it's an exhausting skill to have. And so you've got something even further in that. I mean, I can read humans really well. You're throwing something into the mix that probably never has been human.
yeah.
Ever thought of turning this into a screenplay?
I thought about something like along the lines of a book and everything, but there's so much controversy that goes behind it. Like,
Uh huh.
well, of course, like with the priest and everything. After everything was done, he noticed on my face a look of excitement and awe.
Right.
Something that shouldn't have been there. Something that should like it should have been a look of fear and like, oh my god, what just happened? I should be scared of this.
Mm-hmm.
So he knew right then and there, just by looking at me, that I just ended up with the fascination. And that's what he looks at me and is like, and he was saying, this never happened. And when he said that in my head, I'm thinking, bull crap if it didn't, dude. Because I've been told everything that I've been seeing and feeling for like the past few years didn't happen, that it was all a figment of my imagination. And now you just opened up my eyes to something more. It's like, so,
Well, so suddenly you've. I mean, I can see a couple of things happening to you at that point. I mean, there's
yeah,
a part of you inside that says, "Oh, I'm not crazy."
right.
There's not something fundamentally wrong with me.
Yeah,
What I've been perceiving is a real part of the world. It's a genuine part of reality. I mean, I would think that'd be very liberating.
yeah. But also, along with all of that,
Uh huh.
my we no longer are in contact with my aunt. She divorced my uncle. She remarried, took the kids away, made her new husband adopt them, and then she divorced him. And we moved away after this happened, like that winter, before I started the next school semester.
Mm-hmm.
And now my grandmother who raised me, who's been there through all that with me, because I've chosen this path and everything, refuses to even acknowledge that I'm still alive.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
First off, I'm deeply sorry about that. But I mean, from what you're saying, there's almost no way that you could not choose this path.
Exactly. And there's a lot of pain and suffering that comes with it.
Well, have you ever read the Hero's Journey by Campbell?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Well, I'm going to recommend The Hero's Journey by Campbell. And what it's talking about is, in history and literature, the path of the hero. And there always comes a point where the hero has to choose to address the issues that are his to address or not. And heroes don't always do that. Sometimes they refuse the call. And all kinds of horrible things happen.
Yeah.
When the hero chooses to refuse the call. What about the rest of your family? Are you in contact or close with them?
Well, me and my dad, we didn't talk or get along real well when I was growing up.
Right.
Not until I turned 15.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't be and I couldn't really be in a Christian household anymore, especially with the knowledge I wanted to find. So I moved in with my dad, and we started building a father-son relationship when I was 15.
Okay.
And we have an amazing relationship now. Like, he supports everything I do.
Mm-hmm.
He worries about everything I do. So,
As do I.
yeah. He just, a lot of times whenever I go, like, I make it known on Facebook or something that I'm going on a case that could be dangerous. He's like, call me afterwards, let me know you're okay.
Excellent. This seems to be the right place to end the first part of this interview. Will has overcome a lot, and I strongly believe that as he goes about his work, as he goes about these activities trying to bring greater peace, greater safety, and greatly diminished turmoil to the lives of those people that he helps, that he is protected by the greatest force of all, and that is, of course, God. I hope that Boudreaux, in his realm with the cybernetic sharks, is also protected. Will, thank you so much, and we will hear the last part of this interview next week, when Trailer Trash Terrors returns. Hey, Boudreaux, why don't you sing us out of here?
I'm in a different dimension.
Some parallel universe.
Ain't got no body that's real.
Oh, not a single cell.
Cyber sharks may be circling,
Oh, they do it all the time.
but Boudreaux ain't a meal.
Not even a little one.
I got those quantum predator blues.
Oh, those stinking quantum blues.
So blue, so blue, so blue.
Well, you know, when you're a robot like Boudreaux, the sharks come around, you just gotta kick them in the ass.
Wow, that Boudreaux is one talented cybernetic being. Trailer Trash Terrors is written and produced by me, Vic Hermanson. All media clips used are used under the protection of the Fair Use Doctrine. The music you heard was provided by Lobo Loco and Smart Sound. If you have anything to say about the show, good or bad, if you love us, if you hate us, especially if you hate us, write to us at trailertrashterrors@gmail.com.